Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I have my March wrap up, so let's just get right into the books. I actually read more books than I thought I did this month. I skipped doing a mid-month wrap up because I didn't feel like I had enough, but I probably should have done one, so next month I may have one. But I read 14 books and I also DNF'd 2, which I will talk about as well at the end. But the first book that I actually did read was Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey, and this is her newest release, I believe. This book follows Hallie and Julian. Hallie and Julian met when they were, I believe, in like high school, definitely when they were younger, and Hallie sort of never stopped thinking about him, but he completely forgot about her, doesn't remember her at all, and she ends up becoming like the gardener, or like the, not like a florist, but I guess like a landscaper almost, for his house that he's currently in because his mom owns the house and she's hired this landscaper. And so Hallie's kind of around all the time and he is there trying to write a book. So she's just kind of like in his face, annoying all his schedules, just like really getting on his nerves. It's definitely got like the grumpy sunshine thing that Tessa Bailey does a lot. And it was really cute. I did really like this one. It had some sort of like weird moments to it where I didn't really sort of understand what we were going for. Like, the very first interaction between these two is him meeting her and he literally cannot stop staring at her chest to the point that that's where he's speaking. And I was like, why are we supposed to find that romantic? Like, it's literally the first time they've met and that's how he's acting. Like, it just seemed really strange to me, like, that was their first interaction. And I don't know, maybe that's just me being nitpicky, but like, I thought that was really weird. I think I gave this 3.5 or 4 stars. I did enjoy it. I just thought there was like a couple sort of weird things thrown in there. But it was like a cute little read. Definitely not like a super serious one. Obviously it's a rom-com, so it's not like anything super emotional or anything like that, but it was a cute, like, lighthearted romance. Next, I read Sick Boys by Clarissa Wilde. This is a reverse harem bully romance, and I'm not going to get too into this one because I'm actually finally filming my next bully romance rec video. It should be up, I would say, this month for sure. And I'm really excited about that, but like I said, this is a reverse harem bully romance. It follows Penelope, whose sister went to this university and ended up killing herself, and she left Penelope a note saying to avoid these 3 guys. So of course Penelope goes to the school to go find these 3 guys and figure out like what happened to her sister. And that's sort of how it starts. I actually did really enjoy this one. Like I said, I'll talk more about it in that rec video that will be out soon. But I gave this one 4 stars, really liked it. Next, I read Live in Love by Lauren Akins. This is obviously a little bit of a different book. It's, I guess, a memoir. I'm not really sure what classifies a book as a memoir versus just like a nonfiction book. But basically, if you are a fan of country music, you've probably heard of Thomas Rhett. This is Thomas Rhett's wife's book. And basically the reason I picked this up was the first one being I went to see a Thomas Rhett show last month, and so that was my main draw. Was I kind of started watching all these interviews with him and getting into his like backstory, and his story of how he met his wife and like how they got together is almost reminiscent of a romance book, and that's sort of what got me really interested in it and why I picked up her book, because she does tell the story of like how they met. Basically they met in elementary school and were like friends for years and then became like really good friends like middle school age. Then they dated a little bit in high school but ended up breaking up. They both ended up dating other people for a while before they both broke up with those other people and ended up back together, married. Now he's obviously like super famous. They now have 4 daughters together. Like, it's just a really interesting story, I think, and I did really enjoy this book. I gave it 5 stars. I've never cried so much reading a book before, but it was just really good. I just really liked reading about her childhood, and like she very much grew up in that like small town, everybody's friends kind of world, and it was just like really cool reading about that. Really liked this one. Next was Dr. Grant by Katherina Maura. I hope that's how you say that. I think it is. This one follows Noah and Amara. Noah is obviously a doctor, you can tell by the title, and Amara is some kind of engineer, I think, who designs sex toys, and basically she has an issue testing out one of her like prototypes, and she ends up in his office, but he is in this office because her grandfather has hired him, and he's very clear about, you know, stay away from my granddaughter, blah blah blah. And the second the 2 of them meet, they're like immediately obsessed with each other. And I think that's what I didn't like about this. I gave this 3 stars. It wasn't bad. Like, the book itself was good. It was just very short and very insta-lusty. Like, literally from that first moment, they know nothing about each other, and all of a sudden they're like obsessed and can't stay away. And that was just like a little too over the top for me, so I didn't love that. I did like the first book in this series though. I did think that was really good, so definitely check that one out. Then I read First Down by Reilly. I did a whole like ranting video about this book, so I will link that down below if you want to watch it. I'm not going to get too much into this again, but I didn't really like this. The whole first half of this is pretty much an exact replica of the deal, and then from there on the plot just gets really stupid, and I didn't really love that, so I gave this 2 stars. Really didn't like it. Wasn't something that I'll ever revisit. Next I read Things I Wanted to Say But Never Did by Monica Murphy. This one follows Whit and Summer. This is a bully romance, but it is a very like smut-based bully romance. This to me was sort of the equivalent, it's like the bully romance equivalent of Den of Vipers. If you've ever read that, this is what that is. It had almost like zero plot. Like I really tried to think of what I could say in this video to tell you what this book is even about, and there's really not much. Like, this guy steals her journal, and in order to get it back, she enters a deal with him that basically she'll sleep with him whenever he wants, kind of thing. And that's like the whole book. And it's a very, very large book. And so that's all that really happens. And there was like some like side plot things, but nothing like super important or notable. So that was like really all there was. I gave this 3 stars because like I think if I had gone into this knowing it was the bully romance version of Den of Vipers, I might have enjoyed it. I might have had fun with it, you know, but I didn't. I was expecting, you know, this 600-page book to have like a lot of substance to it, and it just didn't. And so that was a little bit of a letdown for me. But like I said, if you went in knowing what this was, I think you would enjoy it because you would have the right expectations. Next, I read Radiant Sin by Katee Robert. This is the newest book in her Dark Olympus series. This is, I would say, the book with the most plot of the series and the least amount of smut, which was weird because to me, like, every other book in the series has been the exact opposite. It's been like almost all smut and no plot. But this one, for whatever reason, really went with the plot line instead of the smut. But I don't know. It was like a weird balance because I feel like none of the books have like the perfect balance between the two. One is always like way outweighing the other. This one follows Apollo and Cassandra. Cassandra is Apollo's assistant. She wants to get out of this city and move on with her life, get away from everyone, but she needs a ton of money to do that, so obviously she just like can't just like pack up and go. So she ends up entering a deal with Zeus that she will basically fake date Apollo for this week-long party so that he can go and like learn all this information about people, and she's just kind of there to make it look more real and like help him gather information, sort of thing. And so she agrees because Zeus offers her a ton of money, like enough that her and her sister can leave the city and move on with their lives, start over. And now she is in this house with Apollo for a week, fake dating him. I will say the fake dating was very, very minimal in this because it's pretty quickly that they sort of become interested in each other. But it was like a decent book. Like I said, there did seem to be like a decent plotline. I don't know. I feel like this book had like that like middle book syndrome where the plotline was there, but like was it really necessary? Probably not. Like this was like a 1-week event that took place in this book, and like could we have done without that? Probably. But like it was interesting for what it was. Like it wasn't a bad book by any means. It just seemed a little lacking in any sort of like long-term plotline, I guess. And like I said, it was good. It did sort of lack on the smut, both in like the quality and quantity, I would say, for this one, especially for a series that is literally labeled like Dark Olympus. Like there wasn't really a lot of dark things in this book, I guess, which I wasn't really expecting. So that was a little weird, but I did enjoy it overall. Next, I read Puck Drills and Quick Thrills by Eden Finley and Saxon James. This one I said I was not going to read, and I do like still sort of stand by that, because I wasn't going to read this because this series had kind of been getting on my nerves. There are like 5 books. I think this is the 6th book in the series. But out of all of those, only one of them was not a jock nerd trope. Like every other one was an athlete and a nerd, and I was just getting kind of tired of it. They're also all MM, so it kind of just felt like I was reading the same books over and over again with very minimal tweaks to the characters and storyline. And this one was no different. This one follows Wesley and Jasper, and Wesley is the coach, I believe, for the hockey team. You see his younger brother in the previous book. That's his book. And Jasper is a professor, and so that's sort of how they meet, is Wesley goes to talk to him about his brother's assignment, and he ends up meeting him, and he ends up agreeing to be his fake date to his high school reunion. And that's sort of where things pick up, but like I said, it was very, like, the characters are very similar to the other characters, and I didn't love that aspect. And it was, like, good for what it was. I really wasn't expecting much. I kind of just figured I would finish off the series. I think I gave this 3 stars because it wasn't, like, a terrible book, but it wasn't super groundbreaking either. Next, I read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace, and I really did not like this. I gave this 2 stars. This follows Anastasia and Nate, and I don't know, I saw this book around everywhere. Like, everyone was talking about this. All the TikTokers were giving it 5 stars, and, like, I know I can't trust the TikTokers anymore, but I was just kind of like, okay, I want to give it a chance, you know? And when I went to put this, like, on my Goodreads as currently reading, I kind of glanced at the reviews. I try not to read them anymore because then I end up hating everything. But I took a quick glance at the reviews, and almost every person I follow had given this book 1 star, and quite a few of them had actually DNF'd it. And so I was like, oh man, maybe this is not going to be, you know, good. Like, I trust these people to an extent. Like, you know, obviously I don't take everyone's reviews, like, super seriously. Like, they're not really going to stop me from reading a book if I want to read it. But I wasn't expecting this to be as bad as it was with how popular it is. This book, like I said, follows Anastasia and Nate. Anastasia is a figure skater. Nate is the captain of the hockey team. They end up sharing a rink. This doesn't even happen so, like, halfway into the book, this, like, rink sharing thing, by the way. It says that on the back of the book, like, that's the main plot line, but it literally doesn't happen for a very long time. I really didn't like Anastasia as a character. I found she was very almost entitled, and, like, she thought she was better than everyone because she had been to therapy, and she makes even, like, direct references to people not being able to think as good as she can because she's been in so much therapy. And I was just like, okay, like, yeah, we're, like, pro therapy, but, like, you're not better than everyone else because you go to therapy. Like, it's just, that's not how it works. And she was, like, bragging about how, you know, how much she knew and how she knew how to communicate and blah, 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 and all this stuff, while simultaneously, like, ignoring every single red flag that her skating partner was showing her. Like, she constantly defended this guy to anyone, and for no reason. Like, he was absolutely terrible to her for, again, no reason. And it was just, like, so blatantly obvious that this guy was horrible, and yet she just, like, refused to believe it. And that really, like, just drove me nuts. And, like, Nate, as much as I liked him, like, he was an okay character, I kept thinking about this, like, even last night when I was thinking about filming this video, I'm like, what is it about him that was bothering me? And I realized that what it was is, like, to me, he was, like, the equivalent of, like, the Disney Channel, like, hot guy that's, like, in the Disney Channel shows that I used to watch. Like, I remember in Wizards of Waverly Place, Alex dates this guy named Dean, but we really don't know much about him. Like, he's just this, you know, hot guy from the school that every girl wants, supposedly, but that's really the only information we get about him. We don't know about his family, we don't know his backstory, we don't know his interests or anything. He's literally just there to be the hot guy for Alex to date, and that's kind of how I felt about Nate. Like, yeah, we get a little bit of his family issues and his backstory and whatever, but they were all so generic that it was just, like, he could have been anybody. Like, there was nothing distinct about him as a character that differentiated him from any other, like, hot guy that is inserted into a story. And I think that's why I didn't love him, even though he didn't actually do anything to annoy me in the book. Like, I didn't hate him for his actions or anything. Like, he was totally fine as a person, but just, like, as a character, he really lacked any kind of depth or development. Like, he just was a stock character, basically. And I really didn't like that. Found the book was, like, pretty pointless. Like, honestly, there's no plot. Like, for me to even tell you what this plot is, there isn't one. And, like, sometimes that's fine. Like, I'm a big believer that, like, you can totally read a romance book with no plot as long as it is, like, jam-packed full of, like, really good moments between them, like, tons of chemistry. Like, you can watch someone do super mundane things, like in a Mariana Zapata book, you can watch them do everyday little things together, but, like, watch them slowly fall in love over it, and it's still exciting to read. This book was just, like, showing you those everyday mundane things, but with no chemistry. So you were just reading all of these boring things that they were doing in their everyday life for no reason, really, because you weren't really watching them fall in love, and she's pretty adamant that she won't ever date anyone ever, and that just kind of, like, it just wasn't good. Like, who wants to read a romance book about a girl who doesn't want to date anyone ever? Like, it's just, it wasn't great. I may, in the future, read a book. If Henry gets his own book, I might read that, if this author sort of figures out her plotline issues and, you know, maybe shortens the books a little bit in the future, because this one was way too long. But yeah, just didn't really like this one. Like, I do think there may be, like, potential there, but, like, I don't know. After that, I read In a Jam by Canterberry. I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. Literally obsessed. I am like 100% in my small town era right now, so like if you have any small town recs, like please leave them below. I will 100% read them because I am just like obsessed with the cowboys and the farmers and like all of the things right now. This follows Noah and Shay, and basically the two of them were like best friends in high school, but he always had a thing for her, and they both sort of have this plan that they're going to move away from this small town and, you know, go about their lives and move on. Like neither of them want to stay there. And so he ends up going off to Yale. She goes off to some other university in another city, and they lose connection. And he's always kind of thought that they're going to come back together one day, but she has just like moved on with her life and doesn't really think about him, but he never really forgets about her. And so that's why like the little blurb on here is she's the one who got away, she just doesn't know it. And I feel like that plot line was so good. Like I've never read a book like that where, you know, the guy has like just genuinely been waiting for this girl and has been obsessed with her, and like even though she's gone about her whole life, like she's literally engaged to another guy at the start of this and gets left at the altar basically. And that's when she finds out she's inheriting this farm that she lived on when she was friends with Noah. And so she ends up going back to this small town to the farm, and he's there obviously, and she has to get married to inherit the farm. It's like part of the will. And so he's like, well, I'll marry you. And she's like, well, okay. And things sort of go from there. He also has like custody of his niece. So it's like kind of like a single dad book. Like it's definitely got the single dad book vibes. And she's a teacher, so she sort of gets along really well with the kid right off the bat. And I really, really loved this. It was so good. I loved Noah. I loved Shay. I loved the kid. I think her name was Jenny, I think it was. And I really loved her. Like she had so much personality, and I love when the kids are actually like interesting in books. Sometimes I feel like they just kind of throw in a kid and they're like, oh yeah, single dad, and you don't even hear anything about the kid, but this kid was like a main character in this book. And this was just so good. Like if you haven't read this, read this, please. I really hope this like gets turned into a series. I don't know that there was any other characters that were like hinted at that could get their own books, but I just like literally would read anything. I want to read this author's backlist actually, because I think she has a couple other small town books that I'm thinking about buying, because I really did love this one that much. Obviously gave this 5 stars. Next, I did a couple little rereads because I needed some audiobooks to listen to while I was working, and I just couldn't decide on a new one. So I ended up picking up To Love Jason Thorne and To Hate Adam Connor again, both on audio. Loved these. Really just love these. And I also love Sebastian York narrates these, and I've discovered that I really like Sebastian York. So I'm really glad that I reread these. Gave these both 5 stars the first time I read them. I didn't rate them the second time around just because I wasn't really reading them for the sake of reading them, I guess. I just needed something to listen to. So they're probably both still 5 stars though. Like I still love both of them. And so really enjoyed both of those. Next, I read 365 Days by Blanka Lapinska, and it was rough, to say the least. Honestly, I feel like I need to explain why I even picked this book up, because this was not something I've ever planned on picking up. I knew this was one of those books that sort of came in the wave of like post 50 Shades books, and I sort of figured it would be like along those lines, but it also kind of wasn't. And it has been translated. I believe it was originally written in Polish. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's been translated to English, and it's not good. When I opened the Goodreads like page for this to mark it as currently reading, every single review on the first page was 1 star. And I was like, okay, you know what? Realistically, I find when a romance that's not like a traditional romance that's like toxic or whatever, like After or 50 Shades or like whatever, like any kind of book that's not like a happily ever after, oh, everyone's in a healthy, mature, loving relationship sort of thing, like I feel like anything that's outside of that box tends to get picked up by like the mainstream book audience, tends to have a ton of low ratings because they don't read romance. They only want to read the ones that are, you know, like picture perfect, like everything's totally 100% great kind of thing. And so I ignored the 1-star reviews because I was like, oh, you know what, like this was made into a movie, like all these people probably just picked up this book and they like never read romance anyway, so they don't really know what they're getting into. And I totally ignored it, but like I probably shouldn't have, because it was actually that bad. This book follows Laura and Massimo. Massimo has, I think he was shot. They really don't even explain it very well in the book. And he's like, basically, he technically dies and then comes back to life. Like his heart stops and he's like dead for like 30 seconds or whatever, and then he's back to life. And during this time where he is like dead, he sees this woman and he becomes obsessed with her. He's like, no, I have to find this woman. Like, I'm obsessed with her to the point that like when he's sleeping with other women, he's imagining this woman that he's never met before. And he's got like paintings of her in his house, and he's just like literally obsessed with this woman he's never met. And then one day he ends up seeing her in an airport. Her name's Laura. She's just like at this airport. And then he decides like, ah, great idea. I shall kidnap her for a year. And if she doesn't fall in love with me in that year, like, I'll let her go, we'll move on, like, whatever. But I actually feel like this plotline could have been done so well. Like, it's almost like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Like, I feel like it could have been really, really good. And it just was so bad. So basically, they kidnap her, Laura ends up waking up in his house, and he's just kind of like, look, I'm not gonna lock the doors, I'm not gonna really stop you from doing anything, but, like, if you leave, I'll kill your family. And I was like, right off the bat, that just, like, was kind of boring to me. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous, like, that's boring, but, like, I don't know. To me, half the fun of these books is, like, watching the girl, like, try to escape. And, like, there was none of that in this. Like, she never tries to leave. She never really even, like, I would think at the barest minimum, you'd be giving this guy the silent treatment, like, just ignoring his existence entirely. But she doesn't. She's just like, okay, this is my life. Cool. And she just sort of goes along with it. And then, literally within a week, she's seeking him out to sleep with him. Like, not the other way around. She is going looking for him to sleep with him in less than a week since she's been there. And I was just kind of like, okay, like, I would have liked to see some sort of, like, fight regarding the fact that this girl has just been kidnapped. And there was literally none. And that was just, like, really boring to read. Like, there was none of this sort of, like, the vibes you normally get from a kidnapper romance, I guess, like, where she's, like, trapped there and she hates him and, like, all this stuff. Like, there was none of that. There was no good, like, enemies to lovers arc kind of thing. Like, it didn't happen. It was also so insta-lovey on his part because he hasn't even met this girl yet, and he's literally, like, for sure, I'm gonna love her, she's gonna be the best human ever. Like, she could have had the worst personality on the planet, and I don't think this guy would have cared, because he literally was just after the girl that looked like the girl he saw. And I didn't love that because he was just so, like, obsessed with her for no reason. Like, he didn't even know her, and he was like, I'll wait for you to love me. And I was like, you literally just met, like, yesterday. And that was just overbearing and annoying. And I don't know, like, just nothing interesting happened in this. And, like I said, I knew this came out, like, on the tails of 50 Shades, so I was kind of expecting even some more, I don't know, like, uniqueness in the smut department, and that just really didn't deliver on that either. Like, it was very, very standard and just, like, boring, to be honest. Like, I totally see where the 1-star reviews are coming for, because, like, this could have been so good, and it just wasn't. It really, really fell flat, and I was sad about that. And on top of that, the reason I picked up this book is, I know I just mentioned with To Love Jason Thorne and To Hate Adam Connor that Sebastian York narrates the guys' parts in that, which I really, really love. I love Sebastian York. And so I went to look up books that he narrates, and this was one that came up. That was the sole reason I picked up this book, because I really had no interest in it prior to that. But I was like, you know what? I would literally listen to Sebastian York, read it, anything. Like, doesn't matter. I am not exaggerating when I say that there is only one chapter at the very beginning of this book that is from the guy's perspective. So there's only one chapter in this whole book narrated by Sebastian York. So you can imagine my disappointment, given that that was literally the reason I picked up the book. And so that was just, like, more sadness on top of an already, like, terrible book. And so I gave this 1 star, really didn't like it, definitely wouldn't recommend. Like, there's not even, I can't even tell you to, like, pick up this book for the smut or something, because it was just all bad. Like, there was nothing good about this. So probably don't pick this one up. Next, I picked up Whispers of a Broken Halo by Abbi Glines. I listened to this one on audio as well. This was weird. I don't know. I find Abbi Glines' new releases are just not nearly as good as her original books. Like, this had nothing on Seabreeze or Rosemary Beach. Like, I don't know. I do want to read her new one because it's kind of, she said it's not cowboy, but it has a cowboy on the cover and it kind of sounds like a cowboy. She says like a horse ranch, so I think it's along the lines of like Elsie Silver's Gold Rush Ranch series. So like I may pick that one up, but this one and Lyrics of a Small Town were both kind of disappointing for me. I did like this one better. I don't know. They're very weird books. It almost feels like she has like 5 different ideas for different books and then puts them all in one where they don't belong. So this book follows Rio and Bryn. Both of them live in a trailer park when they're kids. Rio's always protecting her, and she's kind of obviously got like a really terrible home life. Her sister is like completely irresponsible and does all kinds of stupid things all the time. And now they are like grown up, and Rio at some point, I guess in their childhood, ended up living with his grandfather who had tons and tons of money. And because of that, he leaves the trailer park, obviously, to go live with the grandfather. And Bryn is kind of left there, and she moves around a lot with her sister, who's always losing her jobs, kind of causing trouble all the time, and ends up with a kid. And Bryn sort of ends up taking care of this kid most of the time because her sister's so irresponsible, and she's the one that holds down the jobs and like makes the money and like does everything. And this book starts out with Bryn's sister doing something that basically Bryn takes the fall for so that her sister doesn't get arrested in front of her kid. And when Bryn takes the fall, Rio kind of is like, fine, I won't press charges. But he like tells her to get lost, and she loses her job, and so they have no money. And basically the whole town has like blacklisted her. Like none of them want anything to do with her. And she ends up working at a like strip club basically. And he ends up bumping into her 6 months later. And he's kind of like, what are you doing here, kind of thing, and is suddenly all protective of her again, even though he's the reason she lost the job to begin with. But I don't know. Like, this one just was so weird because it makes a point of talking about how Bryn and her sister were sexually assaulted as kids. And especially with Bryn, it goes into sort of how she doesn't like people touching her, and she's like more like reserved in that department. Like she's not as like quick to get with a guy kind of thing, even though she's working in this strip club. And you know, something sort of happened that she's just like, no, like I've never been with a guy kind of thing. And for me, like that's a plot line that I actually kind of really like in the deal where Hannah and Garrett are sort of working through Hannah's issues. Like I feel like it really lends itself to really like sweet moments, and it gives the guy in the book like the chance to have those like sweet moments. And obviously it like sucks in real life, but like in a book it's something that I think lends itself to nice moments in a book, I guess. But this book just like did not do that at all. Like she literally doesn't want anyone touching her ever, and then all of a sudden this guy shows up, and it's like all those problems magically disappeared. Like she doesn't even tell him about what happened or her issues or anything, and they literally go from like 0 to 100 in the span of like one page. Like they haven't even kissed, and then all of a sudden they're just like really going for it. And I was just like, what the heck? Like I don't know why you would spend so much time talking about like this like trauma that she has only to like literally throw it out the window and completely disregard it. Like that just seems so strange to me. And like I said, it was like not even something that would have been bad. Like if that had been brought up during those moments, I think it would have improved the book. The ending was also super weird. Like the epilogue in this book is like a flashback scene, which I thought was so weird. Like I don't know, I like literally thought that I hit something on the audiobook or something to like mess it up, because that was the epilogue. Like we didn't even get to see them like together, and I don't know, I thought it was so weird. Like I said, it almost seems like 5 different books like all combined into one. I thought this was gonna have like the Bad For You vibe. Bad For You is my favorite Abbi Glines book, and in that book it follows a girl who just sort of thinks everybody hates her, and she tries to stay away from everyone. And this guy who thinks he's bad for her because he's like this like rock and roll dude. But this one sort of had that in the sense where I thought like she was going to be like that, where the whole town hates her and she's kind of just trying to stay away from everybody and like keep to herself. And this guy was going to come along that was like, no, you're perfect and blah, blah, blah. But like we really just didn't get that. So like, I don't know. I gave this 3 stars. I did like it better than the first one, but that's mostly because the first one had her hanging out with the guy from this book more than it did her love interest. And so I didn't really like that one, but I didn't love this one either. So like I said, I don't know. Abbi Glines is like really hit or miss for me right now. I'm hoping this new one she's writing is better, but didn't love this one. Next are the 2 books I DNF'd. The first one was Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. I got the audiobook of this because these books are just massive, and I didn't think there was any way I was going to be able to physically read it. But the audiobook was 1000% not the way to go for me, because I could not stand the male narrator. He was just like really annoying to listen to, and he had an Irish accent, which I get because yes, the book takes place in Ireland, so like yes, that makes sense. But it was just like honestly kind of ruining the book for me, because every time he said her in reference to the main girl, it sounded like he was calling her whore. And I was just like, whoa, that's not this kind of book. And then I was like, oh wait, that's just him saying that. And like I just couldn't get into it because of that. And so I did DNF this one. Also, I read like 5 hours of this audiobook, and literally all that had happened was she had gotten hit in the head with a ball and he apologized, and then basically they stayed away from each other. And I was like, okay, after 5 hours of an audiobook, I should have some kind of like plot or content or something, and there was just nothing. And so I'm putting this on the back burner. I just think maybe these books aren't for me. I don't know. Maybe I'll try reading them physically someday, because I know people are like really obsessed with them, but I really don't like them. I also didn't know that they were so young. I didn't know that these were YA books. Like, the girl in this is 15, and that is not what I was expecting when I picked this up at all. And so I just like, I don't know. I don't think I'll pick it up again, but like, who knows. Then I also DNF'd Unspeakable by Jessica Willis Fisher. This is, if you ever saw the Willis family show on TLC, this is the oldest daughter from that show. I used to watch this show. I used to be like really obsessed with TLC back in the day. But basically the Willis family had like this big family band called the Willis Clan. And they were like country music singers, and then they got their own show on TLC, and it was like this whole thing. They were on America's Got Talent too. And a couple years ago, it came out that the dad was being charged with all kinds of crazy things, which I'm not going to get into in this video, but you can look it up if you want to know what the charges were, because obviously it's out there. But this book is written by the oldest daughter about her experiences with her dad, and it's just like very hard to read. Like, I don't know, I was expecting this to be like, yes, talking about her dad and that, but I also expected it to talk about other things, but it just really didn't. I listened to about half of this book and kind of got to the point where I was like, why am I reading this? Because I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't like, there was nothing making it, you know, desirable for me to read. And like, I know that that's obviously like kind of just what's going to happen with content like this, but the entire first half that I listened to was just all like recounts of her dad abusing different family members. And I was kind of just like, okay, like, I don't want to read this anymore. Like, you know, and so I just like I didn't finish it because it was just a lot. And like I said, there was no other content to sort of like break it up a little bit. And so yeah, didn't finish that one. I don't think I'd ever go back to it. I think I read enough for me personally, but I do think it's probably like an interesting read if you were like a die-hard fan of the family, which I wasn't, but overall, just not for me. But anyway, that is everything I read this month. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new book videos every single week, and I will see you next time.